For today's athletes class, we are going to be focusing on both strength building and flexibility. So this type of class would be perfect and suitable for any sort of pre-season training that yoga would be working to pair nicely with. So again, we're just going to be working on various strengthening for upper, lower, and core, and then still working to maintain mobility and flexibility throughout the body. So as we come to a comfortable seated position we call Sukhasana with hands on our knees, palms up or palms down, let's first take a shoulder roll to reset our posture. We want to relax into this position, focusing on our deep inhales and exhales. And we create our diaphragmatic breath. So as we breathe in, feeling our ribcage expanding in all directions. And as we breathe out, maintaining length in our posture while simultaneously relaxing shoulders down from ears. And slow, deep inhale breath. And a long exhale breath. Once we've established our diaphragmatic breath, if we'd like adding in our Ujjayi breath, that soft whisper exhale breath. With awareness coming to our bodies, we can do a mental scan, noticing any places or parts of our body we wish to honor in our practice today. That could be any sort of tight, stiff, sore, achy place in the body, or just any other place that we know we want to take care of in today's practice. As we breathe greater awareness into any of these places in our body. As we settle further with our breath, let's work to establish an intention for our practice. An intention is a positive word or phrase said in the present tense, such as I am or I have, and then you follow with what that word or phrase is, such as I am calm, or I am strong, or I have contentment. So whatever it is we'd like to set as our intention today. Now that we have our intention set, we'll begin to flow some movement with the breath. Our next inhale will allow our arms to circle sweep overhead, letting our palms meet and hands slow down to heart center. As we continue to flow with the breath, always our inhale elongating our posture, and our exhale creating mindfulness to the movement. We can always move a little faster or a little slower, such that the movement always matches our own unique breath. Moving faster for more heat and energy building in the body, moving slower for more grounding or mindfulness. We'll take one more circle sweeping flow of the arms. And as we now work to create some rotation in the body with our next inhale breath, arms will sweep overhead. Let's rotate and twist off to the right side, placing hands down to the mat, one behind the other one in front. Inhaling to rise both arms back overhead. Exhaling to twist off to the other side. We'll continue to flow side to side with our breath. Let's flow just one more time on each side, working to create mobility through the spine, bringing out tension that we may be holding throughout our back. And with our next inhale breath, as we raise both arms overhead, letting palms meet and hands flow to heart center. With eyes gently closed or softly open, let's place hands on our knees for seated cat-cow. First inhaling to lift heart center to sky, keeping a slight tucking of the chin, lengthening the back of the neck. Exhaling to round forward, releasing chin towards the chest. Again, inhaling, lifting, arching through the spine. And exhaling to round and release. We'll flow a couple more times in each direction. One more time, moving through the spine with this flexion and extension. Let's ultimately come back to neutral posture, rolling shoulders. We can begin to circle the upper body. We can make big or small circles to work and open up the hips, side body. We can add some of that cat-cow-like motion. And we'll take ourselves into the opposite direction. As we ultimately return back to neutral posture. Inhaling, rising our arms overhead. Let's bring palms together, hands to heart center, where we'll blink open our eyes. So we can transition onto our hands and knees, or all fours, facing to the top of the mats. Wrists coming underneath our shoulders, knees underneath our hips. Strong in the core center as we create neutral spine. One more time through our cat and cow for more movement in the spine. Let's inhale to arch into cow pose, tucking and rounding into cats. Let's try to move one vertebra at a time. So we create a massaging-like effect for the spine. We often move through those places with a lot of mobility and lack of movement in places that are tight. So let's work to create equal mobility all the way from the bottom of our spine to the crown of our head. We'll flow one more time in each direction. As we return to neutral, coming back into all fours, that neutral spine for spinal balance, taking the right arm, left leg, inhaling out from center. Exhaling to bring hand and knee back to mat. Let's switch to the other side. Again, inhaling from center. Exhale to draw back in. Engaging strong through the glutes of the lifted leg, pressing through the heels, such that the toes face to the floor. And when we reach out from our shoulder, we want to have our palm facing inward, such that our thumb is upward towards the sky. And we'll flow one more time on each side. As this last flow brings us into balance, let's walk our hands out a little further so we can come down onto our bellies. We're going to flow in and out of cobra pose, shoulders drawing down our backs. Core center strong. Inhaling to lift heart center away from the mats. And exhale to release back down. Again, inhale, lifting away. Shoulders pulling down the back, strengthening the upper back. Exhale to release. We're just trying to find a little bit more openness through the heart center. Mobility in our thoracic spine. We'll flow 2 more times. This kind of flow will help us to counter any sort of rounded forward posture. Our next inhale breath, we'll press ourselves straight up, hips to heels back into child's pose. Rounding and releasing the spine, let's take a gentle rock side to side in the hips. As we flow through our modified vinyasa, as we gaze forward towards our fingertips, our arms fully extended, shifting forward into a kneeling plank, drawing shoulders down our back. We'll lower halfway down, inhaling to press back up, hips to heels in child's pose. Continuing to flow with our breath. Flow just 2 more times at our own pace. And using this opportunity to build heat and strength in the upper body. And our last flow. Meeting back hips to heels in child's pose. As we rise up onto hands and knees, we're going to flow through our thread the needle, taking our right arm up to the sky, engaging the back muscles, inhaling a deep breath. Exhaling to bring the arm underneath and through, between opposite knee and wrist. Inhaling to untwist, rising back to sky. We're going to flow just 2 more times on this side. And with our next inhale breath, reaching our arm up to the sky, pausing for a moment. And our exhale brings our hand down to that. Let's switch to the other side. Inhale, left arm up to sky. Exhale to draw underneath and through. Inhaling to rise back up. And exhale to release. Finding this last flow where we inhale, reaching up to sky. Pausing, and then placing hand down to the mat. Shifting hips back to heels in child's pose. Maybe seeing if we can find a little bit more length and stretch through the hips and through the torso. Walking both hands off to the right side, creating a lateral flexion where chin tucks to chest. Deep inhale, breath into side body, stretching all those intercostal muscles. Let's walk hands off to the other side. Again, inhaling a deep breath here. As we draw our arms back in front of us, let's tuck our toes, lifting hips to sky into downward facing dog. We'll pedal heels down to the mat, pressing and holding one side, switching, pressing and holding the other. As we let both heels press down to the mat, let's lift up onto tiptoes, heels rising to sky, stretching the bottom of the feet, and then pressing those heels back down. Let's inhale, lift up onto tiptoes, exhaling to release. One last time. And then from here, we'll place our knees down to the mat, hips to heels in hero's pose. We have a lower body leg flow that we do that is encouraging us to do 2 things. One, shift weight backwards out of the upper body in downward facing dog, which tends to happen if someone is really tight in the back and the hips. Weight comes forward and then the upper body is holding a lot more and there's not quite good alignment for the shoulders. And then the other thing that it does is it causes us to create more of a pelvic tilt such that our hips get higher to the sky. So again, if someone's really tight in the glutes and the hamstrings, we tend to be pulled into that posterior tilt. So it allows us to create anterior tilt, which stretches the glutes and stretches the hamstrings a little bit more. And what it does is put our hips in a more proper position for downward facing dog, which also benefits the spine. So with that being said, it's helpful to see it a couple times first, so that when we're in downward facing dog, we know what to expect. So what's going to happen, and I will demo first, is that we lift up onto tiptoes. Then we want to take a deep knee bend such that our knees come almost all the way down to the mat. And we want to pull our hips up and back from that position with our knees bent to reset the pelvis. And then it's a softening of our heels to the mat, not a press that would cause our legs to go straight and us to lose all the benefit we just gained. So again, it's going to be up onto the toes, deep bend of the knees, hips up and back, and then relax into the pose. So I'll show 2 times first, and then we'll do it all together. So a quick demo again. From our downward facing dog, we want to come up onto tiptoes, heels up. We want to take a deep bend of the knees, hips up and back, and then slowly soften the legs. Again, inhaling to toes, exhale, knees drop down, hips up and back, and relax. So we'll try that. And again, it's one of those things that the more you need it, the more you get out of it. So if you already have great hip flexibility, mobility, and you're properly in your weight position, it still feels really good, but it won't feel so dramatic as someone who really needed that correction. So let's come into downward facing dog. And once we're here, let's take a pedal of those heels. Once again, just lengthening through the calves. As we try that line flow, let's lift up onto tiptoes, heels to sky, deep bend in the knees, hips up and back. And then we slowly relax the legs. Again, lifting to tiptoes, inhale, breath. Exhale to drop the knees down. Inhale, hips up and back. Exhale to release. We'll try that one more time. Again, inhale, breath, heels to sky. Exhale to drop down. Hips up and back. And relaxing into it. From here, maybe pedaling our heels, seeing how our position has benefited from that flow. And we'll slowly walk our feet to the top of the mat into forward fold. Taking a moment here, gentle rock side to side, traction in the spine, relaxing and releasing. And as we settle back to center, let's inhale and rise arms to sky. Flowing in and out of our chair pose, hands to heart center as we sink hips down and back. Again, inhaling to rise. Exhaling, drawing down. If we'd like more range of motion in our shoulders, we can circle sweep our arms out in front of us. So whatever arm option we wish to choose today. Let's take one more time in and out of our chair flow. And with our next inhale breath as we rise both arms to sky, palms meeting, hands to heart center. Let's make our way to the long edge of our mat, stepping wide. We have our knees and toes facing the corners, and with an inhale breath, we raise to five-pointed star. Sinking straight down into our legs for our moonflowers. We're going to alternate this with a sunflower, hinging at the hips, heart center more forward, arms will circle beneath. So again, sinking straight down, elbows to sides. Exhaling, hinging, and circling underneath. Maybe we soften and close our eyes to create more awareness to our breath. With our next inhale breath as we bring palms together, hands to heart center, meeting back to the top of the mat into mountain pose or Tadasana. With our feet drawing underneath our hips, let's inhale, arms to sky. Releasing down into forward fold. Stepping our right foot back as we draw that knee down to the mat, inhaling, arms to sky. Let's rotate and twist towards the front knee, hand to hip, hand to knee. Inhaling to untwist, rising arms back. Releasing down and making our way into child's pose. As we shift weight forward into kneeling plank, lower it all the way down onto our belly. Heart center forward, shoulders back, inhaling breath. And as we press up, hips back to heels, child's pose. Let's lift and step the right foot forward. And as we inhale to rise arms to sky, rotating and twisting towards the front knee, and hand to hip, hand to knee. Inhaling and rising arms. Releasing down and finding forward fold. With our next inhale breath as we reach to sky, let's flow through chair. Finding that same flow, leading with the other side. Stepping the left foot back as we drop that knee, inhaling arms to sky. Rotating towards the front knee. Bringing up through the torso. Inhaling to lift back. Exhale, releasing down into child's pose. With a shift of our hips forward, we'll now lower all the way down into belly, elbows alongside the body. Heart center forward for cobra. As we press up and back, hips to heels, child's pose. Let's lift our hips, stepping left foot forward. Inhaling deep breath, arms to sky. Rotating, twisting towards the front knee. We'll inhale to rise our arms back to sky. Releasing down and finding forward fold. With an inhale, lifting, rising, reaching, and flowing through our version of chair. Now for our full sun salutation sequence, much the same. We'll step back the right foot into high lunge, knee away from the mat. Arms rising to sky, inhaling breath. As we release our hands, grounding the right palm, left fingertips to sky, twisting lunge. We'll release this hand, finding downward facing dog. Shifting forward into a plank. Let's lower halfway, inhaling upward facing dog. And downward facing dog. With our right foot stepping, let's rise our arms to sky, inhaling deep breath. With the release of our hands down, grounding left palm, right arm to sky, twisting lunge. Let's release this hand, stepping into forward fold. With our inhale breath, we'll rise to sky. Begin flowing through chair. We'll find that same sequence on the other side. With our left foot stepping back, inhaling to high lunge. Releasing our hand, grounding left palm, right arm to sky, twisting lunge. We'll release for downward facing dog. Shifting forward into plank, lowering halfway, inhaling upward facing dog, and downward facing dog. Let's step the left foot forward, inhaling arms reaching the sky. Releasing down, grounding right palm, left arm to sky, twist lunge. Placing hands down as we step into forward fold. Rising and reaching. Let's flow through chair. One last sequence that we call the athlete's multi-directional flow sequence. We're going to move a little slower as we step the right foot back into lunge. Inhaling high lunge. This is where we start to slow things down. As we release our hands, grounding right palm, left arm to sky, twisting lunge. We're going to change from this position by dropping the lifted arm, pivoting open into warrior two stance, lifting into side angle or extended angle, making sure to keep alignment of the torso. As we release back to a lunge, stepping into half of that stance for pyramid pose, hands to mat, maybe shin or thigh. Inhaling a deep breath here. And with an exhale, hands will come to mat, back foot steps back into a lunge, front foot into air behind us, three-legged dog. Let's come back into downward facing dog. Flowing through a vinyasa. And downward facing dog. Same sequence on the other side, right heel lifts. Let's step through. Inhaling into a high lunge. And as we release, grounding the left palm, right arm to sky. Holding here for a moment to think about that transition. Dropping the lifted palm, pivoting open into warrior two stance, opening into side angle. Let's release back. Stepping half that distance, pyramid pose. Hands resting, that allows us to straight legs and elongate our spine. Softening front knee, stepping into forward fold. Rising to an extended mountain. And let's flow through chair. With our next inhale breath as we rise, let's bring those hands around behind us for a chest expansion. Drawing the shoulder blades to center as we interlace our fingertips. Softening and closing the eyes. Knuckles pressing down to the mat behind us. Let's become aware of the length of our posture. Lifting through the crown of the head as we ground our feet into the mat. With the release of our fingertips as we rise, arms to sky. Making our way down into forward fold. Holding here for a moment, hanging heavy. Chin to chest, maybe that gentle rock side to side. Use this opportunity also to roll out our wrists. We're going to have some plank options today, so it always is good to kind of keep mobility in all of our joints. Let's step our right foot back into warrior one, grounding that back heel to 45. As we rise, arms to sky. To create more strength in our upper back, let's add in our cactus arms. We want to stack elbows and wrists, pulling back elbows in line with our shoulders. Noticing a bend of that front knee towards the front toes. With our next inhale breath as we raise our arms to the sky, releasing down and shifting that back foot back into a lunge. Heel rising to sky, feet hip distance apart. With our arms reaching to the sky, let's move into prayer twist lunge. Hands to heart center. As we hinge forward, bending that front knee more, so we open up through the right hip, then using the strength of our torso, rotating to the front knee. Focusing a little bit more awareness to our left shoulder, pulling back with the left back of the shoulder. As we slowly untwist hands, coming down to the mat. We're going to shorten our stance into pyramid pose. And using blocks, we can frame the front foot. So we take that half stance. First, lift up out of the posture with our hands around thigh, shin, blocks or floor. We inhale, elongating torso forward. Pulling back gently with the left hip as we soften that front knee, exhaling, hinging, and releasing into this pose. Let's notice any sort of shift of weight in the body. We want to have a balance of weight between the front foot and back foot. A balance of weight between the toes and heels on each foot. A couple more deep inhales and exhales here. And to soften that front knee, let's step back into a lunge, making our way back into downward facing dog. Holding here or flowing through a vinyasa. And let's take a moment to drop those knees down to the mat. We're going to do some yogi push-ups, but we're going to do it for more of the chest and shoulders. So instead of hands being narrow, we're going to take them wider. Wide as or slightly wider than our mat. And we're going to do a total of 10. Seems like a good number. Again, knees or toes. And we'll just lower down with the inhale, press up with the exhale. Once we finish our 10, resting back in our choice of child's pose or downward facing dog. Let's alternate knee into downward facing dog, stepping our right foot to the top of the mat, where we shorten into warrior one. Again, inhale to rise arms to sky, dropping elbows into cactus arms. Taking time to adjust into the posture, any sort of big or small adjustments we need to create better alignment in our bodies. And our next inhale breath, as we raise arms to sky, we're releasing hands down, and again shifting weight and adjusting that back foot to a lunge. Feet hip distance. Deep into that front knee as we rise into a high lunge. Creating prayer twist lunge, first elongating the torso forward, and then using strength to rotate into the pose. Couple more inhales and exhales here. gently untwist. Let's make our way into pyramid pose. Again, utilizing blocks as desired. Inhaling to elongate. Then exhale to release. Let's see if we can find a sensation of our heart center drawn forward to the front toes, while simultaneously pulling back gently with the right hip. It's going to create some nice dynamic tension that's going to lengthen and stretch more for the hamstring. As we soften that front knee, let's step back into lunge, finding our downward facing dog, holding or flowing through a vinyasa. As we take a moment to rest our knees down to the mat, let's do some wrist stretches. So we can roll out our wrist, but what we're going to also do is take and push the fingertips towards the forearm to stretch out the front part of our wrist. Let's do the other side. We're going to have plank knee flow, and we're going to have 3 options that we're going to build. And the whole intent is to go slowly through them, and focusing on engagement of the core center and no compensation in the body. So the first one is going to be knee to same side elbow. We'll do that a few times. And then we'll do knee to opposite elbow. And then the third one pairs it together where it's knee to same side elbow. Bring it across the body to the opposite side. Bring it back to the same side and then fully extend the leg. And we're going to do 4 times each of them. You'll have the option to go to downward facing dog in the middle or hold a plank. So I'll demonstrate real quick and then we'll all do it together. So the first one, we're going to come to plank and it's knee to same side elbow and then stay here in plank to do the other side or downward facing dog. And then it's going to be knee to opposite. And then the third one is going to be knee to same, cross across, back to the same, return. And again, you can hold plank in between for a breath, which would be more challenging, or that shift to downward facing dog is nice for shoulders and wrists if it feels like it's a little too intense. We're going to do 4 total, and each of those, taking a little breath in between them. So again, focusing on really good form and alignment as we go through. So let's meet in downward facing dog. Couple deep inhales and exhales here. As we shift forward to a plank, let's bring right knee towards right elbow. And again, back to plank or downward facing dog. And now let's take left knee to elbow, back to plank or downward facing dog. One more time each side. And if we're using that down dog option, we always want to come to and from a plank first, and then we find down dog. Let's take a moment to rest knees down, roll those wrists if desired, and now we're going to do knee to opposite side. So let's find our plank, bringing right knee to left elbow, exhale breath, inhale to center, hold, or downward facing dog. Shifting back into plank, knee across, hold, or find downward facing dog. One more time on each side. And as we take a moment, resting back. Hero's pose, stretching out the wrists. And now as we do our third set, position, right knee to right elbow, cross across, back to the same plank with option for down dog. So again, from plank, exhaling in, inhaling across, exhale back, inhale to plank. One more time on each side. And as we all shift forward, lowering down super slowly for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, resting in Sphinx pose. Elbows under your shoulders. Again, if we want to do those wrist stretches, you have that opportunity. Once you return to the breath, maybe even softening and closing the eyes. As we put our hands underneath our shoulders, let's press up and back, meeting into child's pose. As we take a moment here, maybe a gentle rock side to side. Let's tuck and lift to downward facing dog. Stepping our left foot forward to the top of the mat. As we spiral open into warrior two, back foot parallel to back edge, front knee and toe forward. Let's create alignment with the lower body. So now that we've challenged our upper body and core, get some more work for our lower body. Try to see if we maybe can deepen down into that front leg, sinking hips down towards the earth. Let's take a slightly deeper bend of that front knee as we come forward and down into our side angle. Back arm rising to sky. Taking a couple more breaths here. As we maintain the deep bend of the front knee without losing any bit of that, let's just lift ourselves into reverse warrior. Working to start to increase the intensity of our front line. Maybe we bend and sink hips deeper. Heart center rising to sky. As we return back into warrior two, let's straighten that front leg for triangle pose, reaching all the way forward and then tilting down. That back arm's reaching the sky. Let's inhale in the forward direction. Circle sweeping around just 2 times in the forward direction. Then 2 times in the reverse direction. We can also place his hand to the back, getting a nice shoulder stretch. One arm wrapped behind us. And softening of that front knee. Let's place hands down to the mat as we shift into lunge. Stepping all the way onto the front foot for tripod. As we lift that back foot, pressing heel towards the wall, toes down towards the mat. Staying here, opening up into balancing half moon. Staying in tripod for more strength. Opening to half moon for more balance challenge. As we meet back into tripod, shifting weight back into a lunge, front foot in the air behind us, 3-legged dog. Working to keep those hips squared. And then downward facing dog, holding here, or flowing through a vinyasa if we want more heat building, strength building for the upper body. As we step our right foot forward, opening to warrior two on our other side. Okay, checking alignment of that front knee, back arm, back foot. Once we have all of our key places of alignment, let's soften our eye gaze past the tip of the front fingertips. Noticing the quality of our breath, deep and long, focused and controlled. The deeper bend of that front knee, let's come forward and down into side angle. Taking eye gaze wherever's comfortable, whether down towards the mat, out the side, or up towards the lifted palm. I particularly like to look upward for that additional stretch through the neck. Maintaining all the strength of the lower body. Let's inhale into reverse warrior. Back hand light to back thigh, front hand reaching towards the sky. Return to warrior two. Let's straighten that front leg, reaching all the way forward. Tilting down, coming into trauma pose. The body is nice and open. We add that arm circle sweeping motion, inhaling to the forward direction, exhaling around. Let's reverse that motion 2 times in the backwards direction. And ultimately placing that hand to the low back as we stay here, creating openness of body towards the long edge of the mat. And softening that front knee, let's place hands down to the mat, stepping all the way on that front foot for our tripod. Finding strength with that lifted leg, pressing through the heels, firming through the quad. Staying here, opening into half moon. And if choosing half moon, let's keep softness into that right leg. That's going to recruit more of our muscles to support the balance. Meeting back into tripod, shifting weight into a lunge, front foot in the air behind us, 3-legged dog. As we find our downward facing dog, holding or flowing through a vinyasa. As we place our knees down to the mat, resting a moment here in child's pose. We're going to move into dolphin and do some leg lifts to strengthen through our glutes, countering tension or tightness we may have in our hip flexors. So as we come onto hands and knees, let's place elbows directly underneath shoulders, and we want to check by placing hands on the outside part of the elbows, not the inside part, but all the way on the outside part of the elbows. And once we have that, we can do a fist and hand or interlace, tucking and lifting just like downward facing dog. And if we normally have bent knees in down dog, we will here as well. So we press firmly to our forearms. Let's take an alternating leg lift, where we lift the right heel towards the sky, keeping hips squared, exhaling, taking it back down. Again, lifting and releasing down. And working on strengthening glutes while we're doing the upper body as well. Let's flow one more time on each side. Releasing knees down. Arms can extend out, moving into our downward facing dog. Walking, stepping, or jumping feet to top of mat. For forward fold, let's rise and reach arms to sky. Moving into our chair pose, hands to heart center, as we sink our hips down and back. Creating greater awareness to our breath. We can stay here with weight balanced between heels and toes. Or if we like to challenge our balance and getting more intensity in our thighs, We can come up onto tiptoes for a balancing chair, sinking down deeper. If we have our heels lifted, let's place those heels back down to the mat. Inhaling to rise to an extended mountain. Let's come into a forward fold and find either hand to big toe or gorilla. Hand to big toe is yoga toe grip on the big toes. Gorilla is hands all the way underneath our feet. So whatever option we choose today. And tucking up chin to lengthen the back of the neck. Let's inhale to pull heart center forward as in our monkey pose. Exhale, heart center back to the thighs. I'm going to flow 2 more times. Inhaling to lengthen away. Exhale to release. And 1 more time for the flow. Holding here, dynamic tension in the upper body, elbows pulling backwards behind us. With a release of our fingertips, let's walk, step, or jump our way back into plank. And we'll take our knees down to the mat just for a moment. We have 1 more plank flow, and it's an opening and closing side plank. We can do it on toes, or we can drop our bottom knee. And the intent is in our side plank with our arm reaching up, we inhale, breath, exhale. We're going to slide the arm underneath, inhale to raise back up. So the upper body is kind of like thread the needle, but you're also going to pike the hips a little bit, such that you're almost trying to use your obliques to lift into that side pike motion. So as we come into plank, let's place the right hand beneath us, opening up, bottom knee down if we like, inhaling breath here. Exhale to dive underneath, slightly lifting hips up. Inhaling and exhaling. We want to keep the right shoulder and right wrist mostly aligned, so we're not shifting weight backwards. Arm is sliding directly underneath, and we're going to flow 1 more time on this side. And as we lift up to side plank, releasing to full plank. Placing now left hand underneath us. Right arm to sky, inhaling breath. Exhaling, dive underneath. Inhale to raise back up. We'll flow 2 more times on this side. As we flow last time, let's release to a full plank, stepping right foot forward, and we're going to walk to the long edge of our mats. Standing straddle, inhaling to elongate into the posture, exhale to release. It's a good opportunity to take any options we like, whether big toe hold, hands on ankles, wherever our arms would like to be. Thinking about lifting sit bones up towards the sky. Taking 1 more deep inhale and exhale here. So you walk yourselves back to the top of the mat. Let's take that front foot into the air behind us. Dropping that heel behind to open the hip. We'll re-square the hip, bring the leg underneath and through for our pigeon pose. As we shift our weight backwards to be more comfortable for that front knee. Settling our hips, first inhaling to create length, opening up through that hip flexor. And then exhaling, we can release forward and down into the most comfortable position for our hips. Resting forehead maybe on fists, or down to the mat, or maybe even on a block. We'll spend several breaths here. Ready to open this to the outside part of the hip of that front leg. As our bodies start to relax and release, maybe we want to readjust our positioning as we find greater openness. As we now press up onto our palms, unweighting through that front leg to move into the three-legged dog counter stretch. As we come back into downward facing dog, let's do the same on the other side, lifting heel to sky, bending and opening. You bring our leg all the way through, releasing weight backwards, settling our hips, inhaling length through the torso, and then exhaling to come forward and down. Utilizing that deep diaphragmatic breath, we want to find ourselves at a place in the stretch where we feel the muscles lengthening, but we don't feel like it's such a tightening or constricting, like our bodies are fighting against it. And if we have that, let's just lift up out of the posture a little bit, take a couple of deep breaths, and then as our bodies relax, we can come more full into the pose. And as we stay for a couple more breaths, if we feel like our bodies have relaxed, we can move deeper into the pose. Let's make any last minor adjustments. With our next inhale breath, as we press up onto our palms, unweighting through the front leg, finding our three-legged dog counter stretch. As we go into downward facing dog, holding or flowing through last optional vinyasa. And from downward facing dog, we walk, step, or jump our feet to the top of the mat into forward fold. With an inhale, rising and reaching arms to sky. Let's bring palms together and hands to heart center. Moving into dancer, we're going to start as a quad stretch, and then we're going to move into the full expression of the pose. So let's place weight into the left foot. We're going to open our arm up such that our hand is like a door with the thumb up, and then we're just going to turn it thumb down into normal quad stretch. Keeping that in mind of the two different hand positions, because if we move into full dancer, we'll want to flip our hand back to that first position. So as we stay here, engaging the glutes, opening up through the front hip, knee pressing down towards the ground. If this feels good for us, we'll stay here, or we can flip our palm around to the inside part of the ankle, pressing heel away as we move into dancer. As we press that heel away, we're opening up through the right shoulder, through the right chest. Whatever position we choose, let's return to Mountain Pose or Tadasana. Same thing for the other side, first starting with the quad stretch. Thumb pressing down, using strength in the glutes to open up through the hip. Stay here, or we can flip our palm to the inside part of the ankle, moving into dancer. going to weight back into that first foot, the left side for me, and we're going to move into tree pose, turning knee out, drawing heel in. We can keep the foot below the knee or maybe place above the knee with hands to either heart center or perhaps you raise the arms up and out, full extension. As we work to find balance and focus, we want to maintain hips aligned, engaging the glutes to also keep the hips open. With our hands back to heart center, we can release feet down to the mat, Tadasana Mountain Pose. Shifting weight over to the other side. We'll find the foot and arm option of choice. And we can do the same side, or we can do, or same as the first side, or we can choose different. As we return hands to heart center and feet to the mat. From the top of our mat, let's take those feet slightly wider than hip distance apart. Where we inhale, arms up to sky. We'll bring those palms together, and as we sink to heart center, we'll go also down into our legs, into our garland pose. Also called cobblers or yogi squat or prayer squat. We can stay here to work on openness through the hips and thighs, and through the inner thighs primarily. Or what we can do is move into crow pose as our arm balance. And for crow, we'll want those hands underneath our shoulders, lifting knees so that they come higher than our elbows. And as we squeeze knees in, pressing elbows out, first coming light to the toes, and then we can float the toes off the ground. So practicing crow pose for as long as we want. And we can also ultimately meet back, placing hands to mat and making our way into child's pose. Deep inhales and exhales into the back. Maybe a gentle rock side to side in the hips. And as we now shift weight forward, we're going to come onto our bellies and we're going to do a pose that's called sea animal. You can be any kind of sea animal you'd like to be today. My NC State students like to call this pose hammerhead shark. It's like the locust, but we'll put the hands behind the head. So as we tuck the chin, place the hands just on either side of the back of the head, elbows lifting. Inhaling to lift the heart center. We can stay here or add the legs lift as well. We'll stay for just one more breath. And as we release down, hands to knees, shoulders, pressing up and hips back to heels in child's pose. We're going to have one more opportunity for those yogi push-ups with hands wide, chest push-ups. And again, we're going to do 10 of them, knees or toes, flowing with the breath. So as we shift back forward, hands will go wider than the mat, lifting up to either knees or toes. And as we inhale, we lower. Exhale, we press. Moving at 10 at your own pace. Once we finish our 10, leading back into child's pose. As we slowly rise up, let's bring those legs around in front of us. For boat pose, we'll first sit tall, bending our knees, Feet hip distance as we come to the back curve, as well as pause here. Shoulders sliding down the back. Heart center is open. Chin is slightly tucked. And we can float feet off the mat. Staying here with knees bent, maybe extending legs straight if that's within our practice, or floating hands out at shoulder height. Let's see if we can find control with the breath. Stillness in the body. If our legs are extended, we'll bring them back to bent. And if our arms are reaching, we'll place them back behind the thighs, where we slowly lower feet down to mat hip distance apart, hands behind us as we lift into tabletop. Chin tucks or eye gaze lift, opening up through the front of the body, deep inhale breath. So we let our hips flow back down to the mat. Let's bring soles of feet together into butterfly pose. Readjusting so that we are at that tall posture. Shoulders sliding down the back. Inhaling a breath and staying here, or we can hinge forward on our exhale breath. As we slowly release from this posture, we're going to have an opportunity to practice our inversion of choice. So basically everything that we learn in level 3 plus legs at the wall. So if we have any neck or back or any other reasons we don't want to go upside down, legs up the wall will allow that partial inversion. We can do L-shaped handstand or forearm stand, or we can do a full inversion. So we'll have a few moments to practice whichever one we want to. So finding some wall space. And once you have your wall space located, again, just practicing the one of your choice. I'm probably going to do an L-shaped one today, just because the wall's here and L-shape is easy. So practice whatever one you'd like to, and we'll meet back in our mats in a few moments. Once we've had an opportunity to practice our inversion of choice, we can start to make our way back to the mat, and we're going to need to have a block nearby for the end of our practice. So once we find our mats, let's draw one knee into chest, onto our spines, drawing both knees in, and with our hands behind the thighs, a gentle rock side to side, massaging through the low back. As we settle to center, we can take those knees wide out towards our shoulders. Staying here for wide knees to chest, or if we like, hands above the feet, pressing heels to sky into our dead bug or happy baby. As we add dynamic tension to the arms, those knees pulling further outward and downward towards the mat. So gently release our feet back down to the mat. Sliding shoulder blades underneath us, so with our feet hip distance apart, let's press into those heels, lifting into bridge pose. Walking up higher onto our shoulder blades, those fingertips reaching towards the heels. Inhaling a deep breath to open up through the front of the body. We can stay here, or if we like to practice our full back bend of wheel, flipping palms on either side of our head and working to extend the arms. Releasing from our back bend of choice and bringing those knees into the chest. With our feet releasing, let's take the left leg long, shifting the hips and the right knee across the body for supine spinal twist. Letting hand rest lightly onto the bent knee. As we may even soften and close our eyes. Further relaxation for the body and for the mind. As we slowly come back onto our backs, we can re-square the hips. Our right leg extending, shifting, taking the left knee across the body. As we slowly come back onto our backs, let's locate that block of bars and we're going to move into restorative bridge. Our blocks have a couple of sides, actually 3 of them, so we have a low, a mid, and a high. So staying either low or mid, we'll place that block underneath the hips, supporting at the sacrum. So we want to stay below the low back, readjusting till we find that place of comfort. And we can either stay here with our knees bent and arms alongside the body, or for more of a full body stretch through the front of the body, we're more than welcome to extend the legs and or the arms. If we feel any discomfort through the low back, we'll just want to bring those arms and legs back into a more comfortable position for the body. This is a great time, again, to soften and close the eyes as the body is supported by our prop, letting go of the need to have any control. We want deep inhale breath into the body, and with our exhale breath, relaxing, releasing, feeling fully supported by the block.
If we have our arms and legs extended, we'll slowly begin to bring those back in. The knees coming to bend, feet hip distance apart. The arms alongside the body. As we press through the heels to lift the hips just enough that we can slide the blocks out and off to the side. Our hips meeting the mat. Let's take knees into chest. Gentle rock side to side, massaging our low back. And from here, let's make our way to seated. We are going to use our mats for restorative fish pose. So starting at the end where our feet are, we're going to want to start to roll that mat. And the tighter we make the roll, the bigger of a prop we will have. And also kind of a little bit depends on the thickness of our mat. So we're going to keep rolling our mats up until we have about 3/4 of it rolled. And then we're going to lay down such that it is beneath our armpits at the base of our scapula. And we can just take the arms out like a T or fully extended. And this will be one of those postures, again, you'll want to have a little bit of adjustment to that place that is comfortable for you. Whether the rolled up mat is a little bit higher or a little bit lower on your upper back. But basically we want to feel that it's at the back side of our back that is at the same place that our breastbone is at. As we begin softening, closing our eyes, relaxing, letting this be a place of openness for the heart center, and a way to counter passively any sort of forward rounded posture. As we start to bring awareness back to our posture, we can either roll up to get ourselves off our mats, or I just like to lift my hips like bridge pose and let the mat roll itself back out. We are ultimately going to find ourselves in our final relaxation, our restful posture. So if we would like to place any clothing on top of our bodies or any other items of comfort. A couple of slow, deep inhales and exhales as we adjust the body. Feeling grounded and connected to the earth. As we start to bring awareness back to the breath, without moving the body, just creating that awareness. If we'd like to spend a little bit more time here supine, we're more than welcome to stay. Or if we'd like to move into our sideline pose, rolling onto our side of choice, where we can let the bottom arm become a little pillow for our heads. Or if we are, we can create some gentle movement in body, wiggling fingertips and toes, maybe even rolling out wrists and ankles. Any sort of gentle movement that we would like to reawaken and re-energize the body. And as we ultimately make our way up to seated, where we come to Sukhasana, easy seated. Hands to knees, palms up or palms down, and our eyes soft and closed. Full deep inhale breath, and a long relaxing exhale breath. And with our next inhale, as we rise our arms all the way up to the sky, letting our palms meet and hands flow down to heart center. We pause here in our Anjali Mudra, our symbol of gratitude.